Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show and a writer, performer, based in Los Angeles, California. How you doing? Got a good episode for you today. Today's guest is Kath Myers. If you don't know who Kath is, why don't I read you her bio right now? Originally from Ohio, musician Kath Myers had a roundabout route into making music that took her from the world of high finance in New York City all the way to living the artist's way in Los Angeles. Her first album, under her own name, Sensitive Groups, was just released in June, and it's fantastic. Ooh boy, it's a good album. I saw one review that said it was something like St. Vincent with, I don't know if this is exactly the phrasing, notes of Liz Phair, but I see Kath's music more as, let's say, a combination of Amy Mann and Destroyer. In fact, I know maybe a lot of people don't know about Kath's music, so why don't I play a song of hers before we get into it. But this was such a gosh darn delight to talk to her. She's had an interesting journey, somewhat like mine, so obviously out of a narcissistic impulse that interests me, but we get into a lot of existential issues, as always, on this show. So I hope you enjoy this one, and I hope you go and buy Kath's album. Anyway, if this is your first time listening to Beginnings, thank you for checking out the show. What I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like. You know, all the episodes are up on Spotify. For some reason, only the last 100 are on the other apps. But if you enjoy my talk with Kath, maybe you'll enjoy my talk with some other people from the world of indie rock that I've talked to just in the last, let's say, year or two. In this episode, we talk about Ian MacKaye. I talked to him. Ellen Kepner from Pale Hound. Mary Timony. Mac McCon from Superchunk. And tons of other writers and actors and performers. So if you like what you hear and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on whatever podcast app, whatever podcatcher you listen to podcasts on, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Coming up, I got some great episodes. Next week should be Bill Oakley, one of the early Simpsons writers who's written some of the most classic Simpsons episodes. I just talked to Night Jewel, which was a really wonderful talk, and Keith Knight, aka Keith, the cartoonist who the show Woke is based on, and that was also really great. And of course, episode 500 is coming up, and I'm not going to spill the beans on who the guest is yet, so... And yes, I've already recorded it. So, anyway, look out for that. But for now, let's talk to Kath. But before that, let's play a song from her album, Sensitive Groups. This is one of my favorite ones. This is called Lucky You. Oh, closest I feel to being back in college radio. Anyway, here it is, Lucky You.
I was up late again, wandering around on my Ambien. We were dancing in the kitchen, I was spinning around by myself. It's you and me, it's gonna be forever. Always knew that we would be together. Oh, where does the time go? I've got good news, it's true. I've planned out your whole future for you. Lucky you, lucky you. You've got a lifetime table for two. You don't have to sit up at the bar, no, no. You don't have to pretend you're reading. No need to tell everyone how much you love special someone. I'm standing right in front of you. I've got good news, it's true. I planned out your whole future for you. Lucky you, you've got a lifetime. Table for two. Table for two.
I'm curious because there's this thing with both comedians and I think songwriters who are, well, this is what the question will be, autobiographical in some way. I sometimes confuse what I'm going to say seems autobiographical. I often confuse the art for the artist in some way, or I think I know the person. I've met a number of psychopaths out here in Los Angeles.
Sure.
Who they're not that I'm saying you are, but I'm just saying that like comedians who I'm like, oh, you're like a nice, I've seen your act, you're super nice and interesting, and then like they step off stage and the mask falls and you're like, oh, there's nothing there.
Yeah. No, I totally get you on that one. I think I've had similar situations too, because when somebody's art comes across as being a certain way, that's just you suddenly expect a certain thing from them. But maybe it's just an act.
Yes, I felt really duped when I was in college and I was listening to Death Cab for Cutie, and I was like really I'm like, oh I resonate with this, and then I heard some interview with Ben Gibbard. He's like, oh yeah, I just made that thing up, and I was like, what?
No.
What? No,
I know, it's
this
so
isn't
sad,
a movie.
but I know, but I guess it's also like, you know, I don't know, maybe they just really genuinely want you to like take it in your own way and like run with the story yourself and make something kind of broad enough to where you can just kind of want to choose your own adventure things and people can relate to it on all different levels. I don't know. I mean, my shit is just fucking personal. Like I just write what I have had happen for the most part. Like, I'd love to be able to write otherwise. I'd love to just like make something up and just write it, but that's just not how I write, unfortunately.
Well, so that was my question, which is how much of it, and if the answer was 0%, I would not, it's not like I'm judging, but I'm saying like how much of you is in your songs? You're saying it's mostly.
It's I think at this point of this, especially the songs that are on the record that I just put out, it's 100%. Like, I mean, very much. And it's just so funny too, because I really am actually a very private person, which makes no sense whatsoever. I don't even really like talking about myself. That's why even this is like terrifying.
Really?
A podcast. Yeah. Like this makes me so nervous. But for some reason, when I write a song, like I just all comes out and I'm like, Jesus Christ, why am I doing this? Like, why do I feel comfortable writing this and singing this, yet I don't want to talk about it? But I will, and I'm trying to get better at that, and I'm trying, because people do want to hear, if people enjoy the record, then they want to hear more about what's behind it, I think I just am so weird about that. I'm like, nobody cares really what it's about, but I guess people kind of do,
Yeah, I mean, look, I have some suggestions we can get into about what, it's very common on the show, honestly, and like I also do it a lot with, I mean, I did it a lot with a lot of like the sketches I wrote. I mean, this is like a long time ago, like when I first moved to New York. Parenthesis. Another reason that I think I really resonated, two things that I resonated with your record. Pure nostalgia for New York. I've been out here for 4 years. I miss New York. I haven't been back because of the pandemic in like a year and a half. I'm going for the first time in a couple days. And there's just this huge nostalgia for New York. And then I forget. Oh, the other thing is, in this parenthetical, is that like you started writing music, or you started at least trying to do it professionally, like in your early 30s, which is also kind of my story. I didn't come to New York until I was 29, somewhere around there.
That's awesome.
End parenthesis. We can get into some of that stuff, but I 100% forgot what was at the beginning of the parenthesis. That I was
quite all right.
Some ideas, right? It happens very often on this show that like, what if you're a private person or you're a repressed person, or for whatever reason, the things that you're not talking about, you feel comfortable doing it in art because there is there's a layer in between you, and you can always disavow whatever you want, and it can be like, well, that's not me, or it's just like a safe place. I think that happens a lot, having done this show for so long. I think that is common. I don't know if that is your story, but, it is somewhat.
Yeah. Or it's almost like I don't even know if I think of, like, when I write the songs and then record the songs, like, I'm not even thinking that, holy shit, like, sorry, am I allowed to swear? Is this like...
Nope, it's
I'll try not to.
Clean. You can say whatever you want. I mean, don't say awful.
I'll try, I'll try not to say horrific things.
Sure. Don't be racist, homophobic, transphobic, all,
Got it. I think that's probably smart. Yeah, wait, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, it's like when I write the songs and record the songs, I don't think I'm even thinking about, eventually releasing them. So it's usually right before I release them that I just kind of have a little bit of a breakdown, and I'm like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. Like, this is so personal. And then when I finally do, like, that's just what is happening, and that's just how I write, and I don't know. I'm just getting better at it, I guess, and getting a little bit more comfortable with it. And I think there is also the veil of humor over all of it, which makes it a little bit less like, some of the stories that are kind of tragic or like this or that. I tend to like sprinkle in some goofy stuff just to kind of like, but I mean, I think that's my personality, in general, like growing up Catholic and just like sweeping everything under the rug and like making a joke out of everything. And that's definitely like a defect of mine that I still go to laugh, let's laugh about our trauma. Like it's that kind of stuff. But I think, my heroes, like songwriters, have been a lot of people who tend to write that way, just like incorporate humor in. And I think when I first started writing, I was like, who do I think I am? Like writing like jokes in my songs or making this funny. Like I'm not, Weird Al or something, even though I'm obsessed with Weird Al, but like literally obsessed with Weird Al. But I don't know. I think I didn't think I was like able to do it, or I was not like allowed or something, but that's just kind of how it comes out. So just take it, own it.
Well, there was that B-side you did of My Bologna.
Like a surgeon.
But I mean, I want to get back to the Catholicism. You grew up in Ohio, right? I know two facts about you, which is Ohio and you started writing music or trying to do it professionally early 30s. So those are the two facts. I want to get back to
New York. You know about New York.
In New York. But I'm really curious about this kind of like what, like you said you're a private person, like when you try to, is there a barrier? And I mean that in a like metaphorical sense. Like I I don't think I was ever a private person, but like, I know that if I was ever like touching on anything emotional, this is all pre-therapy, but like if I was ever touching on anything emotional, there would almost feel like a force field, and I couldn't like go past that. So like anytime there was like a possibility of a deeper connection with a person, it was like, coming up against that force shield. And is it that for you? Like, what is it like when you say like you're a private person? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it really, I don't know what it is, but I think I can kind of relate to that whole, like shield thing, and again, like I have gone through a lot of therapy and certain self-help programs that I think have helped with that a lot and just have taught me vulnerability, which I think just, I don't know what it is. I've just always felt like nobody, like when I talk about myself, like nobody cares, or like nobody needs to know what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling or like what I'm going through, because I don't want to be a burden. Like, I think that was a lot of it. I know that's like some deep shit, right?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, yes, period. But like, also, like, I'm curious: is that like a gendered thing? Is that like your parents thing, like dealing with your parents, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just being raised. I mean, my parents are lovely people. Don't get me wrong, but I was raised Catholic. I went to church every Sunday, and I was kind of raised to like respect your elders, like be nice to your teachers, like. If, I was just pretty much taught not to really stand up for myself ever. And to just kind of like, don't rock the boat. Just wait until you're called on, just like be nice and, and that's great. And I think it made me like a very agreeable person. It made me like very, like a wallflower basically. But it wasn't until I got therapy and a bunch of other help that I realized that it's, like that's why I am how I am in so many ways. And that's probably why I didn't start music until I was in my 30s. Cause I was like, don't like take up space in the world, I think was a big part of it. And I think I also just, again, like didn't think that anybody gave a shit, but it's like, we're given these gifts. I mean, I genuinely believe that like natural talent is given to us from whatever you want to call it, the universe or a God or whatever. I mean, and I think that it's really important for us to share those gifts, even though that sounds a little cheesy, like I just think that that's what we're born to do. When we're being given something, we need to share it, and people do want to hear it or see it or experience that in some way, because it's cool. Like when I see somebody who can paint a picture, it's like it just blows my mind. I'm like, how do you know how to do that? Or like a little kid who suddenly just like whips up this crazy drawing. I'm like, what? Because I can't draw for shit, but like I can sing a song and write a song. I don't know why. I have no fucking idea like where it comes from, but yeah, I think it's important to share that stuff.
Well, what is it then about when you write a song that you don't feel that kind of like wallflowerness? I'm being a burden. I'm taking up too much space, that you feel otherwise?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah. I don't know. It's almost like this different kind of persona comes out. Like it is me, but at the same time, it's just this snarky little me or something that's like, that like is trying to call somebody out for something like in a song, and like things maybe that I'm afraid to say out loud. Maybe that's part of it. Like that's just something that kind of came to my mind. Maybe it's that I am afraid of like speaking my truth, that I think maybe writing it gives me some sort of comfort in a way. I don't know. It's just, I don't know where these songs even come from. Like they just kind of happen. I'm not one of those like wake up every day and write. My God, I wish I could do that. That's like the dream, that's like some Springsteen shit, but like I can't, that's just not how I write. I mean, it just comes and goes. I should sit down more often and just like, cause you can't just like, depend on that thing to just pop into your brain. Like,
right. There's two modes. There's the work of it where you're just like, like I'm on the second draft of this film, and I got the notes from the director, and then I had to like go through the first draft and be like, like it's just too long. That's it, right? And so I have to like cut out some shit, and I had to go through, and the literal work of the labor of it is just I wrote down every scene, and I wrote down what happens in every scene, and I just had to, and that's fucking forcing myself to sit at my computer and do this like work in the same way that like, I mean, I do it on a very amateur level at this point, but like a song, like if I'm sitting there and I'm like playing and I'm like, oh, what chord goes next? And then I have to sit there, like if whatever's in my brain, I can't figure out how to translate that into my guitar. I have to sit there and do this labor of like sitting there and being like, is it this C? All right, no, it's not. It's kind of like a C. Well, what do I do? Right. There's so the labor, right? There's that stuff of it. And then there is the kind of like when you like fall into that mode of being when you're in the flow, and it's like it's just this like perfect creative act. And I mean that's just, you can't manufacture that. It just happens or it doesn't happen at certain times. Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh God, that's like that's the special stuff. I mean, that's a rare thing. I actually had, it was funny. I had this guitar that I was working for this woman as her personal assistant for like 2.5 years or something. She was very nice, but she was like, I think kind of mentally ill. And she came from a lot of money. She was an odd bird, for sure. I don't want to talk any shit about her because she was lovely and nice, but, and I don't do that because I'm a nice girl. But she had this this crazy house that was kind of dilapidated. It was like kind of like some Grey Garden shit. But she had this guitar that I had kind of found like in her basement. It was this like 64 Martin. It was beautiful. It had like never been played. So she let me take it home and like strum on it for a little while. And it was just this magical guitar. Like I have never, and it, again, it's like not the guitar, obviously. It's like, but it was magic. And I wrote like almost an entire record on this thing. Like it just wouldn't, I've never been in that kind of a flow before. And so, yeah, since then, I mean, I've written a couple songs, but she fired me and then I had to give the guitar back and it was very tragic.
Wait, why'd she fire you?
I don't know. It was very odd. Like she sent like a mediator to do it. Like it was like, I don't, not my business, but I think that there was some things that are not my business that probably happened. But yeah, I had to give the guitar back and it was really, really tough. And I'm still trying to figure out how to get back into that flow. But again, it wasn't just the guitar. It was just like a place that we somehow magically find ourselves sometimes. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean, I've got my own little scientific explanations for like,
do tell.
I think this mode of like, it's a certain mode of being. It's like, there's like just certain modes of being other than everyday life. And there's like an artistic mode of being. There's, I don't want to talk about sexuality because I am sex neutral. My wife is sex negative. I'm sex neutral, as we talk about on our other podcast. In which case I just don't want to talk about that kind of stuff with people. But, because I'm a repressed, person from, Pennsylvania that grew up in Reagan's America.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Mm-hmm. So, but like, that's another non-everyday mode of being. There's just these, and like like getting into that mental space is just have there's all the stuff you can't control, and it just has to be like if you're creating with other people, right? That has to the other people that are there. It has to be like, this is so dumb, but like the temperature, the humidity, like all these kind of certain things that like allow your body to relax into whatever mode we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a non-everyday, like a non-chore mode, washing the dishes mode.
Yeah.
And it's most of it you can't control, right? For me, like some of it's like temporal. Like I write the best around like from 10 to say 10 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Oh, you're one of those types.
I don't know why. It just happens to be that's the right time for me. So I think it's all these kind of different factors that you just can't control. And if you happen to if all of them line up at a certain point, you can like slip into that mode.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that. And I think like I am such an like an early bird grandmother. Like I go to bed so early and I wake up really early. But you know what you were saying about like temperature stuff, like this heat is like making me crazy, and I think I probably am not as creative in the heat, you know, but I think that maybe if I did become a night owl and like when things cool down a bit and the apartment feels a bit more you know, tolerable. I mean, I have this window unit, but it's so loud and it's just like, you get it. So yeah, I think that probably does make sense. I think there are probably so many factors that go into it. Maybe I'll set an alarm sometime and just like wake up in the middle of the night and try and write and see what happens. I mean, it'd be interesting.
I mean, why not be scientific about it and be like keep a logbook, keep like a ledger or something. Be like, I tried writing at midnight, it didn't work. I tried at 1 a.m.
Yeah, totally. I think that's an interesting way to look at it. I like that.
Another thing is I can't have any other I can do the labor of it. I can just like put word after word in final draft and force myself to get it done. But like to slip into that mode, I can't have like Naomi, my wife, has to be asleep, or like I know that like the animals have to be fed. Right? I can't have other things like wanting something from me. I have to be able to like slip into that. I mean, this is just me. It's different for everyone, obviously, but like
that makes sense. Do you ever write something though when you're somehow like very much in that mode, and then you go back and read it and you're like, who wrote that? Like that is some cool shit.
No, I'm arrogant enough that I'm like, oh yeah, I did that.
That's funny. No, sometimes I hear songs and I'm just like, damn, like that was so. God, I don't know how to write like that. Like what happened? That's clever. That's some clever stuff.
Well, then you slipped into this mode where like somehow your influences mixed in your brain in a way to create something unique.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think that's.
Sorry, go on.
And I think I was just gonna say that, like, you know, just really leaning. Yeah, just I get insecure and I get like. I don't know. I just get so in my head about stuff, and I'll just scrap something because I'll be like, no, like you can't say that, you can't write that, whatever. But I just think like when you really just lean into who you are, like that's why I'm so obsessed with Weird Al. You know, like holy shit, like talk about just leaning in. I just listened to his podcast, or he was on Conan's podcast recently, and it was so. Great. Like he's like one celebrity that I would absolutely geek out, I think, if I met him. And I'm sure he would not disappoint either. I'm sure he'd be lovely and sweet. But yeah, he talks about how like he was a total dweeb. He was like a total weirdo. And, you know, he was super smart, obviously. And he just like just leaned into the fact that he liked to play the accordion, that, you know, he was an absolute goof. And he just like made this world for himself that is incredible.
Maybe let me amend this like mode of being. It is a mode of being you could slip into where you are yourself.
Yeah.
And I think like when I said like, oh, like Naomi has to be asleep, it's because like in some way when she's awake, I'm me, but I'm me in relation to my wife, right? And especially if she's here in the apartment, right?
Yep.
And then when I can slip into that mode, I'm the meest me.
Yeah,
I just shook my head for the listener. I shook my head.
SMH. Yeah, but I think that's totally true. And I think no matter, you know, even if you have a partner who you are as much yourself around as you possibly can be, you're still yourself with that partner. You're still, it's still, I think, impossible to be the way that you are when you're alone. And I think that that's like a thing that a lot of people talk about when they're, you know, dating or trying to find somebody. It's like, I still want to like do weird shit and like hang out in my underwear and like eat like hot Cheetos or like whatever. Not that that's what I do. But yeah, it's just, these different versions of ourselves, I guess, you know?
So, okay. That being said, if this is the hypothesis we're going by, what is like the thing do you think that makes you the youest you? I'm so sorry that's the phrase I came upon. This is spontaneous, so it's going to be ineloquent.
I think for me, I mean, and like, sorry to go here, but it's like, um, I've, I think I've gotten a lot more spiritual over the last couple years. And for me, it's like really connecting with my higher power universe. Like, you know, I by no means have this like God that I grew up with at all, but I've developed a relationship with my own version of a higher power. And sometimes it's a tree, and sometimes it's like a squirrel, and sometimes it's feels like more of a human type of thing. But I feel like when I can really meditate or pray, if you, yeah, that's in quotes, you know, then I feel like I can become the most me, because I think that that's what's intended of us, you know. But I think some people go their entire lives not even knowing. I feel like I didn't know who I was. I still am constantly learning more about myself, but I mean, you know, I didn't know anything about myself, I think, until like my 30s.
I mean,
really.
What happened?
Well, I was, and I mean, I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober now 2 years.
Nice.
But yeah, so, you know, leading up to getting sober, I just feel like I was living in a bit of a fog and just, you know, kind of barely getting by. Or I kind of went from like partying and having it be really fun to having it like get really just depressing and just really dark. So yeah, I feel like in the last 2 years is when I think I've just started to really be able to open my eyes and really kind of figure out who I am and figure out what I should make and what I should do. And I don't know, it's just, but it's constantly changing and evolving, and that's okay, I think. But I don't know, it's been an interesting couple of years, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are in the program. I mean, are you doing? Sorry, I don't know if
Yes.
this is too much, but are you?
That's okay. Yeah, we won't call it by name, but yes. Yes, I am.
That are in the rooms.
I'm in the rooms. Yeah.
Yes. And seeing that, you know, watching them go through kind of the process of getting sober, of working the steps, it's interesting to watch them become their art become a lot. I'm going to use this word better, but what I really mean is like more themselves. Like as they become more themselves, their art, the things they make, become more an extension of their own ego, right? Mm-hmm. You're putting like, okay, what I'm calling good art, and you know, I'm sure anyone listening might quibble, or you might quibble about this, is like, I think good art is when someone puts a certain large percentage of who they are into the things they make.
Oh yeah, I agree.
As opposed to just tossing off, like, I mean, I've been asked to like toss off bullshit in this industry, where I'm just like, yeah, sure, I can write, 100 jokes in a day for this show, sure, and then just do it, and I feel nothing, right? But like that versus like this movie I'm writing, whatever, which I think is like very much me. Like there's a huge difference in that.
Totally. And I mean, I've had this discussion with friends before, like in terms of live music. Like, you know, I would rather go and see a band that is so shitty and so sloppy and so like just technically not good, but it is absolutely pouring their heart into it and like passionate about it, than some, you know, a bunch of session players just like playing their instruments just perfectly and singing pitch perfect. That's gonna bore me, you know. But yeah, it's just if somebody's doing something with their entire being, then it just is gonna come across, you know. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna be able to feel that, and that's what we want. That's the point of art, right? Is to make you feel something.
I mean, did you notice a difference in like your writing or your playing, you know, through getting sober?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like, the songs that are on the record that I just put out, I pretty much wrote most of them pre-sobriety. But I think but I performed, I mean, but we recorded them all while I don't think I ever would have even made it into a studio if I hadn't gotten sober, because I mean, I was just a hot mess, and like, just weren't lining up for me. Like, I think that's, you know, when you're just completely like on a hamster wheel, then obviously nothing's going to fucking happen. But yeah, I think it was something about recording them in sobriety that just made me kind of look at the songs in a new way, or just like, you know, be like, holy shit, like, I think I meant that when I wrote that or something, you know, kind of just, they just took on new meanings, I guess. And I think I was able to, you know, sing them and perform them with so much more passion, just because I was like, Jesus Christ, I was in such a dark place. Like, I was hurting so much, and I was able to kind of bring myself back to that, but also be outside of that at the same time, if that makes any sense. But I have written quite a few songs in sobriety, and we've been recording them as well. And yeah, like they're very different. But I also just feel like they're kind of a lot more me too. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I was writing from the heart, obviously, even when I was a hot mess. I mean, I wasn't lying about what was going on. But yeah, I still love those songs though, even though they're dark and twisted, and, you know, I hope that somebody hears them and can relate, you know?
Yeah.
Paul, let's talk about it.
Look, it's not my experience at all. I think the thing that like, look, besides like having lived in New York for like a decade, like, your experience is not my experience at all, but like, the songs really resonated with me, you know, and I mean, I'm a teetotaler. Like, I'm like, even just stuff like, what's the third song where you're like, on the album, it's about like,
according to the J Train one, where you're talking,
yeah, you being like into like a younger person or something like that. That's never, I've always like dated women who are like around my age or like older than me, but that like, it's never been my experience, but like, it still resonated with me. And I think it is like you, again, putting yourself into these songs in a very deep way.
Yeah, and that was because, I mean, that was a completely true story. Like, that actually happened, and it was a beautiful time, and but yeah, I remember performing that in the studio, and just like, it just all came back. And I think probably because I'm sober now, like, it just felt so clear, and I think I was able to deliver, you know, pretty intense performance, like, because of that. But that's great. I'm really glad that you're able to feel that, even if you weren't experiencing that. That's cool.
So, I mean, I want to go back again, like I said, Catholicism, Ohio. I mean, I love talking to people from the Rust Belt because I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'm curious. I think we're like somewhere near the same age, and I'm kind of curious about if you were also warped by the 80s and early 90s, if that's true, you know, but where did you grow up in Ohio?
I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland called Rocky River.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's not a lot going on there. It was pretty quiet. You know, I didn't grow up in like the cornfields or anything, not like that Ohio, but just a very slow and boring suburb. Rather conservative, I'd say, for the most part. And yeah, I kind of just got out of there without really thinking about it. Like, I mean, I went to college in Ohio, but after that, it just wasn't even a thought that I would like live there. I mean, and pretty much my whole family is still back there, and then they're lovely and they're good people. But it just wasn't a consideration to stay. When did you leave?
I mean, look, I'm going to preface this all with like, I wasn't very self-aware with like what I wanted out of life, really. I was kind of just like, my parents had said, you know, we want you to do this. And I knew on some like level that I didn't want what they wanted, which was like, you know, I mean, I say this like almost every show, so I'll be very brief about it, but like, Jewish lawyer, like we're Jewish, so like lawyer, doctor, like there's your things. And like, I was always trying to like find some middle position with my unaware like desires to make art and what they wanted, and it was always like half measures that I was never very happy with.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't I moved to New York when I'd gone to college, I'd gone to grad school, and it was just like, again, unaware, just like this like existential kind of unquiet inside me, and I didn't
Yeah.
know, I didn't even know how to talk about that. I just felt unsettled, and
Yeah. Yep, like that weird itch that you're just like, I don't know what I'm uncomfortable about and what I need, but something is not right. Something's not adding up. Feeling settled. No, I totally hear you. I mean, my parents just wanted me to get a job, get a 401k and work until you die. And I think they used to always say too, like, you're not supposed to love your job. Like that was a big thing. And I get it. I mean, it's boomers, like you just worked, and that's just, you put food on the table, but it's like, I've only got one mouth to feed, like I can kind of get by in other ways. There's a lot of other things. However, when I went to college, I graduated, I stopped in Chicago for a minute, but then I moved to New York and I got a job in the finance industry, and I was there for 5 years. I was an assistant in one of the biggest private equity firms in the country. And I talk about a fish out of water. I mean, I don't even know how, I think it's just New York. Things go so quickly. I mean, you've lived there and it's just like, I don't know what happens, but it's just, you blink your eyes and you've been there, 3 years, then 5 years, then 6 years. And I don't know what happened. And I was also like heavily drinking and using drugs at the time. So maybe that was part of it too. But I mean, I just worked this job and I was like, well, this is just what I'm going to do because it's good money and it's fine. And I mean, yeah, I work like annoying long hours, and I'm working for a person and it's just completely unfulfilling, but this is just what I was taught to do. So, yeah. And it just takes a long time to realize that there's other ways of doing things. And I don't even regret that job. I mean, like, I'm glad that I did it. And what I really am grateful for with my parents is that they taught me a really good work ethic, and whether that's me like just working random jobs and just like piecing together the rent for the month. Like I've always been able to do that. Like I've never been that kind of person who just like whines and like, I don't understand, I can't make money. Like I'm always able to figure it out and be resourceful and get by no matter what. So I am grateful that I've been given that work ethic, and also just like they, have taught me how to manage money and not spend beyond my means and all of that, So the boomers have got some stuff. They've got some good ideas. Like there's good in there. A couple. A couple. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and they just don't know any better, Bless them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have my own resentment. My parents are great, again, but like I have my own resentments for their generation.
Yeah.
So I assume you had this kind of same kind of unsettled feeling in you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
wait.
Absolutely.
Sorry, one parenthetical. What years were you working in the financial industry?
Oh, it was into 2008. So yeah, like I was there.
Okay, so you were like, so it was like Goldman Sachs or something like that. You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I worked. It wasn't Goldman, but it was one of the big private equity firms. But yeah, it was like during the time when like was it Lehman that went under? Like one of them went completely under. Yeah, there
Bear
was a lot of
Stearns,
stress.
then?
It was Bear. Yeah, it was Bear. Yeah, I mean, everybody was losing their minds. I mean, I didn't have, anything. I didn't really have anything in the stock market. It didn't really affect me at all, but it was wild to be there during it, Yeah, completely crazy time. The head of the CEO of the company, I guess, had such an insane art collection that is like what kind of kept him afloat, because like his art collection was so priceless. And even though he lost like heaps and heaps of money, he still is like, his net worth is still ridiculous because of that. I mean, just crazy. That, God, billionaires,
I wonder how many of those paintings were taken from Germany around 1945 or so.
I wonder.
Okay, and parenthetical. I was just curious about that because that's very fast. That period, that's like when I started to get kind of like very politically aware, was and very like aware of like, you know, I learned what a collateralized debt obligation was, and I learned what a CDS was, and all this kind of stuff.
Fun stuff. Fun stuff.
So okay, end parenthesis. So when did you start to become self-aware of this, or either self-aware period, or aware of this kind of like unsettled feeling, and like I can, and that you had the power to like do something about that?
Yeah, that was kind of a funny thing. So I was living in, this was around like 2011 probably. I was in a relationship living with someone. He had asked my father to marry me and like bought a ring and all that stuff. And like long story I won't even go into, but like my mom ended up like spilling the beans to me and telling me that he had asked my dad, and I just kind of freaked out, and I was like, I'm not ready, and I don't think that this is the person for me, all this stuff. So I was like, and it was kind of an out of body experience in a way, that I just started planning this trip like to Asia. I was like planning my escape from my job. I was like planning quitting. I was planning the breakup. It was like crazy. It's almost like I was like planning my own, faking my own death or something. I mean, I was just just making all my exit plans from life, basically. So I planned this trip, like this around the world trip, by myself. And then I ended the relationship. I quit the job, and I just moved out of New York and went on this like 6-month like excursion by myself to Asia. And I just remember being on the plane and being like, what am I doing? Like, what happened? Who booked this? Why is this happening? Like, what is going on? What have you done? But then I got there, and it was just like the best thing that has ever happened. I mean, I think I just saw how, other people live so much more simply. And I mean, I literally carried on my bag, and for 6 months, like I had, very little with me, and it was just so cliche. It was very eat, pray, love. And it was during that time. There was the place where Eat, Pray, Love was based. I actually went there, and it was so funny. It was all like divorced women in their 40s. Like we were calling it, what were we calling it? We were calling it Ladies Paradise or something. I don't know. It's so bad, but like, it was very funny. But yeah, it was cliche, but it was also one of the best things I ever did. And I think it just made me, realize that there's a different way of doing things. And I was also stacking up money. Like, what am I going to do with all this money? I'm still young. Like, just spend it. And you're never going to spend it when you're working 60 hours a week. Like, what are you going to do? And you get 2 weeks off a year. Like, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
That's nuts. So, and I met a lot of European friends and people who they just take a lot of time off to travel. That's normal. And that made so much more sense to me. So after that, I just kind of on a whim, I had some friends living in LA. So I did I came straight from Indonesia to LA, on a layover, and just stayed there for about a week. And they all lived in Venice. So we just rode bikes around, and it was so romantic and amazing. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to move here, see what happens. I didn't have a job or anything, but I just moved to LA. And then I fell back into finance for a hot minute, just because New York finance on your resume, the LA finance people who are just little pipsqueaks were just loving that. So it was hard. That seemed to be the only industry that was interested in me. So I fell back into it for a minute. It was just a disaster. I absolutely hated it. Lasted 7 months, and then just was done forever. So I left the country again for a little bit, went to Costa Rica with some friends. And once I came back, I was just I just started writing songs. I didn't even know I was capable of that, really, but I don't know where it came from. I mean, and I've told people this before too, friends, we've discussed the difference between LA and New York too, and this is just in my own head, I'm sure, but I just felt in New York there's this different sort of level of pretension, or maybe concern with credentials. I don't know, but in LA, it's like everybody's just chasing some dream, and nobody gives a shit. Like, if you know what you're doing, like, say you're a singer, songwriter, you're a singer, songwriter. Like, who cares? You're an actor, you're an actor. Great, act. You know, like, so it just felt a lot more comfortable here, and there was just, you know, everybody had like a fire under their ass to just do something. So I don't know. I just started writing songs, and then like a band organically sort of formed, and then we got a manager, and then like we got a booking agent, and just went on some tours. And
But you wait, sorry. When you say you just started writing songs, does that mean you had no musical background and you just started learning how to play guitar?
Yeah, I mean, I think I took a guitar lesson or a few guitar lessons when I was in like the 7th grade or something. So I knew like cowboy chords, which is probably why my first band was like kind of a cowboy band because those were like the chords that I knew. So I was just naturally sort of writing like country-ish songs because they're so easy and fun to write. But yeah, no musical background at all. I still don't know how. I still have no idea what I'm playing when I'm playing music. Like, I don't know chords.
What? I mean, what prompted you? Like, what prompted you? Like, this is the thing for me, right? As opposed to like, I mean, coming out to LA, you could have started. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm really curious about like, okay, you're living this life, and I did something similar, right? You're living this life where it's just like, this is what's prescribed for you. This is what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have if there's no kind of like, nothing to like pry open a little space to think. Like, I'm guessing for you that this was your Eat, Pray, Love trip, right? It pried open culture, or pried open this prescribed path for you just a little bit, so that you had a space to be like, wait, do I actually want this? Like, I had inklings of this. Like, when I was, I remember just like a fight I had with my parents when I was 16, where like I just didn't. I said to them, like, I don't want this life, or I don't want to live in the suburbs or whatever. Like, the suburbs were, it was a fine place to grow up for me, but I just like, I don't like it. I don't like living there. I like cities, and I like the energy of cities. And I just knew on some kind of like bodily level that I couldn't really access because I didn't understand how to, right? That it just didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. And it took, I don't know, like I was really into like indie rock in high school, and then I guess I started playing in a band in college with my friend Kyle, and I think that's where it really started to like take hold. But I'm really curious, like, if you're living this prescribed life, like, was there anything prior to this trip that made you start to like pry yourself apart from this prescribed path? This is the narrative I'm putting on you. You can tell me how accurate it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as like, I mean, there was one like big moment that was kind of insane that happened when I went to Costa Rica. After I did the Asia thing, I tried to do finance again, got fired. I got to collect unemployment though, which was great. So that's when I went to Costa Rica, and I was with a couple of my really close friends from high school, and the three of us were out. I was trying to surf. Like, I learned how to surf in Indonesia, and it was so easy because it was just these perfect, beautiful waves, and the water is warm. You could, on so many of them, you could just like basically walk the board out and then like hop on it and catch a wave. Like, it was easy. But then I was like, oh, I know how to surf. So I would like try and surf at other places with like much more difficult conditions. And I was like, this is really bad. I don't even hardly know how to swim. Like, I kid you not. Like, I can like tread water, but I don't know how to like swim very well. Like, I am not a water person at all, and I'm terrified of the ocean. Like, I have no business being on a surfboard. But anyway, I was with some friends. One of them's a very good surfer. The other one's a really good swimmer, so she just preferred to like swim. So myself and the other girl I was with were surfing one day, and the other friend was just swimming, and she just ended up going out a bit too far, and she got sucked into an undertow. And I was super far away from her, but I heard her like screaming help. And I was like, you know, me, don't know really how to swim, terrified of the ocean, shouldn't even be in there in the first place. I was just like, we were the only 3 people in the entire ocean. There was like nobody else who could help her. So I somehow like and talk about higher power. Like, it was one of those things where it felt like I just got like lifted up and like brought over to her because I was so far from her. Somehow like get her onto the board, and like we're both like hyperventilating, like get to shore. We're both just like a mess. Like somehow, I mean, she would have died. She would have absolutely died. And I did not feel like it was me that even like saved her. It was just like this weird force, and it was really nuts, and it was really scary, but also kind of amazing at the same time. And strangely enough, she's also in program. This was before I got sober, but she's in program and has been in program. And it's like, I just always felt like it was one of those things where it's like, it was not her time to go because, she was helping, she helped so many people. But anyway, after that happened, when she was leaving, she wrote me this letter. I was like, while we were in Costa Rica, I was like, there was these two old timers who would like sing in this local bar that like nobody was ever in, and they would let me like sing with them just because whatever. I was there, and this friend of mine who almost died, she always just knew that I loved to sing, even like at karaoke. I mean, that'd kind of be like the only time that I would sing, or with some old timers in Costa Rica. But she just always was like, I've never seen you happier than when you're doing that. Like, you have to do that. So she wrote me this long letter, like, hey, thanks for saving my life, but like, but also she was like, you have to do that. Like, you have to do something with music, even if it's just totally for fun. Like, I've never seen you light up the way that you do, and you're doing that. And I just like, I sobbed and cried, and I was just like, she's freaking right. And in a way, I was like burdened by it, because I was like, ugh, she's right, God. Like, I don't want to have to like try and do this, but I just kind of did, I was like, I don't know, looking back at it, it's so funny because it's, I just never give myself any credit. I just don't know like how things happen. Like, I just usually turn around and I'm like, oh, like that happened, but I don't feel like I really tried or something. But it's like, obviously I did. Obviously I worked hard. Obviously, whatever. But yeah, so that's like the long story, the long crazy story of how I, really was pushed into it in a way by a friend.
Did you have ambitions, not even just to do art, but like when you were a kid or like a teenager or something like that, did you have ambitions to do something?
Not really. I mean, I think I just always heard my parents saying like that I needed to have like a 9-to-5 desk job, like that to me was going to be my future. And I mean, I was one of those kids too, where like thinking about, oh, well, when you're in your 30s, I never really wanted kids, which was funny. Like, I never had that dream, or I never even dreamed of marriage in a way, but I always just dreamed of myself as like a career woman, like, in a suit or something, but it was just something that was kind of put upon me, I think, Yeah.
Yeah.
You get that?
I mean, what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was in finance. He was a financial planner, I guess. He worked for Morgan Stanley, or even Dean Witter prior to that, like in the 80s. But he just has like, I think he's mostly retired now, but he just mostly worked for families, like just money management stuff. And my mom is a nurse. She's mostly retired too, but yeah, just like normal people stuff.
Yeah, no, because I'm very curious about this, because I mean, I always credit this, growing up Jewish in a very Christian area made me like othered me, like, so that was like the first thing that like pried me apart. And I think that's where I was like feeling that disquiet when I was in high school, where I'm like, this isn't for me, right? That eventually, like, it took until my late 20s to like start figuring out. And was there anything like that? Like, what is what is Cleveland, or I'm sorry, I forgot this. You said suburb of Cleveland, right? What is it like when you're growing up there? Do you fit in? Like, what's your childhood like? Are you popular? Where do you fit in? I'm just throwing a bunch of questions. Feel free to answer whatever like piques your interest.
Yeah, it's funny. It was when I definitely, drugs and alcohol played a big part in like which course I decided to take. But when I was between like 13 and 15, I was super into like the hardcore straight edge scene, like
Mhm.
in Cleveland, and my best friend Beth and I would just like put X's on our hands, and we had wore tons of chokers, and I had like a half shaved head, and like we went to shows, and we were like in the pit, and it was wild, and it was amazing. That's why. Oh, I was also P.S. You interviewed Ian MacKay. Like, holy shit, that's so dope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
you've had some
exciting.
amazing. You've had some really cool guests. P.S. Side note, but yeah. So I was super into that, and I mean, I don't know. Like, she was so cool, and I could have seen myself like staying friends with her and just like continuing to go to shows and like meet really interesting and diverse people. But when I got to high school, I adore my high school friends still. Like, don't get me wrong, they're amazing and so funny. But I started doing drugs and drinking, and then I had to like break the news to her that like I wasn't straight edge anymore. And I kind of just conformed, and like not even conformed. Like, I definitely wasn't a popular kid, and I went to an all girls Catholic school, so it was like kind of a different. I don't even know what popularity exactly was there. It was very different than it would be at a co-ed school. But I think I was just kind of a fuck up. Like, if I just smoked a lot of pot, and I was doing like that weird late 90s ecstasy that like was cut with Lord knows what, and like it was, I still think that part of my brain is like half eaten because of that stuff. Like, I did so much of it, I drank so much, and I just think I kind of like lost sight of any of that cool little artist kid who was, going to shows and like and just doing cool things once I started drinking. And I don't regret anything in my life, but it was an interesting kind of crossroads that I was at. Like, I could have been like cool artist Kath young, and like maybe I would have gotten into music. Maybe I would have started playing. Maybe I would have been in a punk band. Who knows? But I just got fucked up instead.
Well, I mean, what was it about that? Like, what was you? I mean, obviously, it wasn't like just a stark choice right in front of you, but like something attracted you to smoking pot and doing the PCP laced ecstasy or whatever it was. Like, because like it never appealed to me. Like, whatever it was, I don't know if it was just like Dare or whatever, right?
Oh, Dare.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it was.
Dare. I forgot about Dare.
I don't know what it was. You know,
And
my dad told me about, like, in the 60s, he told me like basically a story that never happened about like someone who did acid and then jumped out a window, and it was just basically he was just telling me like the plot of some after school special.
Oh my God,
that didn't happen. But like I was scared enough about drugs that and I also liked reality enough.
Yeah.
That like I was having fun.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious,
lucky.
like, what was it? You had these like kind of like this like fork in the road. Like what was it about like pot that was exciting?
Yeah. Well, I think it was also just, I mean, now that I'm doing program and like hearing so much about this, predisposed, this alcoholism and this addict, this allergy, basically, like, I think I truly had it since birth, and I didn't drink alcohol until, I was 15. But once I did, it was just like, boom, as they say, off to the races. I felt this awkward kid who like is introverted and doesn't feel comfortable in a group of more than 3 people is suddenly like, doing cocaine and able to like talk somebody's ear off and feel so confident, even though I was probably an absolute idiot and like saying the stupidest thing ever, which is a fact. But
I don't know. Everyone that I know that's done cocaine, they're brilliant and great when they're
great
honest.
Great ideas. Always starting some business like the next day. You're like, that was the stupidest idea we've ever had.
What do you mean? It's nail polish for cats.
Genius. Absolutely genius. Yeah. And then forcing art upon people. I feel like that's another thing people do on cocaine a lot. It's like, you gotta hear this thing I made. I wrote this. I was just discussing that with friends. But anyway, I think it was, for me, a lot of being an addict and an alcoholic and just suddenly being like, I'm home. Like, this is it. Like, these people get it, and they're not all alcoholics and addicts. They're just partiers. And we just had a lot of fun. And the friends that I made were also just really funny. Like we just, it was just nuts. It was just like a wild group of people, and we had a ton of fun. But I was not thinking about any type of artistic passion or any type of anything. I mean, I was just kind of a bum, you know? And then I somehow got into college. I applied to one college and I got into that college, and I went to that college, and the same thing. I just like was drunk the whole time and on drugs. And yeah, I got by. I mean, I actually kind of enjoyed the classes. I felt like it was a lot easier than my high school, my prep school that I went to, which was just like so hard. I mean, I did not do well in high school. I was also like I said, on drugs most of the time. But yeah, college, the classes were okay. But again, I didn't make any interesting friends who I mean, lovely, nice people. Like, I talked to some of them still, but I wasn't involved in anything musical or artistic or anything. I just somehow graduated, and that was that, So I think drugs and alcohol played a huge part in why I didn't pursue.
Huh. I mean, was this something about like, look, for me, again, this is all stuff that was that I was unaware of. But I had that prescribed path kind of drilled into my head, right? Mm-hmm. And I hated and resented that this was being forced upon me in a way that like I wasn't taking responsibility for the fact that like at any point, I mean, we're not, my family's not rich. Like it's not like I could do whatever I wanted, but like I could have moved to New York right out of high school or right out of college or whatever, right? If I really had been taking responsibility for myself and being like, and also being self-aware and like being like, this is not what I want. Mm. If I had known that, if I had had any kind of just moment to like think, but and all of that stuff. This is what I'm curious. Look, I'll throw this as a hypothesis. It's very reductive, so tell me if it, in any way, if it makes sense. But like, I'm kind of curious if that was the same for you, and you had this inkling of this other life, right? You were into punk. You were going to shows, right? I wonder if that was like in the same way for me. It was scary to do to like doing this stuff because I didn't have a safety net. It's not like if I tried and failed, that both. I was stuck with the existential knowledge that I failed at this thing I wanted to do. And I had to just live out the rest of my life, doing something that I knew was shitty. So, like, I think I ran from that. And then, again, like I said, tried to find these half measures, tried to do this kind of stuff. I'm, again, like I said, reductive, but I'm wonder if there's any kind of, like, thing where you're like you could have gone down that other path, but was it too scary or like I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a lot of it too. As much as we're like, oh, this sucks that like my parents would make me do this. Like it is easy. Like once you get a job and you start making money and you get into a routine and you just like wake up, eat breakfast, maybe go to the gym, go to your work, maybe have a drink with a friend after work, like. And the paychecks are just coming in and you're not even thinking about it and you just have money. Like that is easy, So yeah, the thought of doing anything else, a lot of times I think I just pushed those thoughts away because I was like, that's actually not possible. And yeah, same thing. I mean, I could go move back in my parents' house if I wanted to. Like right. That's a safety net, quotes,
Yes.
But like,
I guess I do have that.
Yeah, but we didn't like have money where I could just be like, "Hey, Mom, I want to do music. Can you pay my rent for a year?" Like, absolutely not. Like, right. they've never paid my rent. That's not a thing. That's not a consideration, So yeah, I think for the most part, it was just like I could be pretty unhappy and pretty unfulfilled, but also have like a pretty chill life and like be able to go to a store on a weekend and buy a new pair of pants and like some hot new shoes, or you could like struggle and be an artist,
right?
So yeah.
Hey, with finance money you could have walked down Bedford and gone into one of those shops that only have like one rack of things.
Right? Or like a necklace hanging from a twig. Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like, it's just like a lot of this stuff, like, it's not my story, but it's like, it resonates with me a lot because I like wonder how much, there's so much of this stuff. It takes energy, right? Like you said, there's this easy path you can take because like, that's just what culture tells you you're supposed to do. Right. And like, if you grew up with boomer parents, like it was just like what they did was like they just got a job and they had a family and it was easy to do that because that's what culture said. And it takes energy to push yourself away from that because it is easy. And it's not just like, I don't mean it easy and just like a like, you know, like third grade math problem way. I mean that it takes a lot of energy to live your life. And it doesn't take a lot of energy. You don't have to expend a lot of energy to just do the thing that culture tells you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, like, going back to that story of my friend, like, when, you know, she wrote me that letter and said, like, you have to do this thing, that's, like, it made me upset because I knew that, like, if I did that, life was going to be hard. And life was, like, I was going to be struggling, which is something that I've never experienced having like less than a couple $1,000s in the bank, you know what I mean? Oh, plus savings, like just because that was what I was taught is to like have backup at all times. So it took a long time though for me, even as a musician, like I still worked a lot of side jobs, like to always have that pad in the bank, even if it wasn't obviously as much as it was when I was in finance. Like I still just was always paranoid that, you know, I was just going to lose all my money or not be able to pay rent or whatever. So yeah, I think that's it. It's scary and it's nice to be comfortable. Even it's not nice. I mean, but in a way, yeah, like it's nice to just not worry about, you know, how you're going to pay your rent.
Yeah. Look, when I did something a little different, you know, I went to grad school and I had I had a stipend, right? But it wasn't much. I was like, I want to say it was like $14,000 maybe a year, maybe a little more than that. I was living in Philly in a 1-bedroom in South Philly. And I was like barely scraping by. It was not, this was like 15, 20 years ago, but I was like barely. And I think that's one of the, you know, as you were saying, I'm like, I think that's the thing, because I had always been taught, have a cushion, you need a 401k, you need retirement, you need all this kind of stuff. And I was on that path, and then I was living this life where I had to give up a lot of that stuff because then the idea was, of course, like I was going to be a professor. I was in a PhD program, right?
Oh, wow.
And so in giving, and with this like kind of knowledge, like, well, once I get hired, like once I get, a professorship somewhere, then obviously I'm just quote unquote slumming it for a couple years.
Yeah.
But like
means to an end.
Yeah. But once I started giving up that stuff, I realized I'm like, oh, I don't need this. I don't need to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that like started me, that really like pushed me away from that path.
Totally. I think another thing too, going back to 2008 financial crisis, like, you know, we're basically taught by our parents, like, oh, well, everything's going to be fine if you have a job and a 401k. But it's like, oh, wait, actually, nothing is guaranteed. You can be 95 years old and get that shit wiped out.
100%.
So it's like, I think that I think it was almost subconsciously slipped into my mind around that time that I was like, wait, what the fuck? Like, this is kind of bullshit. And I think that what we were taught is not true.
Yeah. I mean,
you were never safe. We're never fully safe.
I mean, this might be too personal, so tell me if it is, but like all this stuff happening, right? Then what is it that leads you to get sober in the first place, or to like be like, oh, I don't know how to even phrase it, but you know, because you already were on this path to be a musician, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was like I just, it's kind of weird to say too. I mean, going back to the whole like higher power thing, I feel like I kind of always had this like universal connection, higher power thing that I didn't even really know was there. That was like slowly sort of pulling me, even though I was like getting fucked up along the way. So yeah, I am grateful that it did kind of start to happen, or at least I was able to like open my eyes enough to, you know, get off the normal train, get off like the finance train, normal train, boring. Yeah. So yeah, you're right though. I was like, I did before I got sober, quite a bit before I got sober, you know, I did, or at least I tried, you know, I'm not like a successful. That's another question. How did you even find my record? I think
maybe a publicist, like I saw like a notice and then I listened to it and I bought it on Bandcamp. I think that's it.
Oh, thanks.
I think I saw no, and
okay.
It was great. Like that's it. You know, I listen to it like whenever anyone sends me anything. I listen to at least one song, and I think it just resonated with me. That's it. But like, I made this narrative in my head, which is that like you start doing drugs at like 15 or, you know, however old you were. And that like getting sober let you reconnect with that person you were before you started doing drugs. That's a narrative I made up in my head as we were talking. I don't know whether that's accurate or not.
No, I think that's super accurate. And it's funny too, because I actually reconnected a lot with that best friend that I had who I would like go to punk rock shows with. And hardcore shows back in the day, and we're like, I mean, she lives in Seattle now, but like we still talk all the time, and like she is so cool, and she literally like she still has never had a drink, and she still like listens to a lot of the same fucking cool bands that we used to listen to, and still goes to all the cool shows. And I'm like, it's just so wild, to look at it like from an outsider standpoint and just be like, it was such a crossroads situation, you know, like, but it just brought me kind of right back to that place. It's, yeah, I think you just made me really think about some things.
Look, this is all bullshit armchair psychology, but I think but in going through it, what I think is interesting on the show is just this kind of like, because again, going back to the beginning, not to like tie it up in a bow or I guess at the end of the show.
I love that.
Oh no,
I love it. It's seriously gets in my brain, and I love it so much. It's such a good theme song. Anyway,
yeah, that Savrador, they're great.
Amazing.
Not to tie it up in a bow, but you know this thing about like that we said early on about like you being the most you in this, like this in getting sober, right? You get to reconnect with that who you were at that time. I think the reason why I do this show and why I talk about people's childhoods is because I think you are the most you then before society. I sound like I am like in a shitty punk band or something. Before society gets their claws in you, but you know what I mean, right? Before culture, before you start like going into the easy path, if that's like what you know, before you start like there's a groove that's like been dug out for you, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's easy to just like fall into that. And like I literally when I was in grad school, I had started having these kind of like visions. I don't mean visions in like a like LSD way. I mean that like, but my brain just started manufacturing. I could see myself like physically like slide down a hill into an open grave in my brain.
Wow.
It started like picturing, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so that's the groove that's been dug out for me, and I can do that. I can be a professor and do that, or I can like do the difficult thing. And if I just go on this path, I'm just gonna have these visions the whole, like, it's just my brain's just gonna like fucking plague me with these things for the rest of my life, and I don't want that. It's like,
that's heavy. It's heavy shit.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go into that.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting way to look at it. Like, do I want to continue thinking like this? And just, but that I think is just that the universe just kind of nudging you and throwing those thoughts in your brain. Like, sure, you can keep doing what you're doing, but you're also going to slide into a grave and die.
Yeah. I mean, my take on it is that's my own self-awareness that was like buried down deep is like scream. It's like, and I'm hearing like echoes of that scream.
Yeah.
And then, the next couple years was me like digging it out with a brain shovel. I don't know how this metaphor works, but like
a brain shovel, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah,
Wow.
so that's why I asked that, because I'm like, oh yeah, like in your childhood, you're the person you are before like all this stuff gets like dumped on you.
Yeah, or before you start caring what other people think, let it be your parents, or like, maybe I didn't want it. Like, I think I got like some dude at the mall like bullied me or like made fun of what I was wearing once, like when I was like wearing a bunch of chokers and like probably Jenkos. Which there's nothing wrong with those. And yeah, but it like stuck out in my brain, and I think a lot of me was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get made fun of for being myself, so why don't I just be what everybody else is?
Ah, damn. Like, how insane is that? Like, that stuck in your head, and then you were like, you had this choice of like this path, and you're like, well, I'll just go on the one where I'm not being made fun of.
Yeah,
I mean, literally. It's that that resonates with me so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's nuts. It's crazy, the stupid little things from childhood that just like stick with you,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, do you have, and I think the people that like make it out with, if you like totally always did the other path from childhood, it's people who had the energy or the walls up for whatever reason already to resist that. It's like, how much can you resist that kind of stuff before you start giving in?
Totally. Yeah. I don't know. It is really cool though that people are like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Somebody like threw an egg at my head because of what I'm wearing, but like, I'm still going to fucking wear it. Like, that's cool, man. That is admirable, because I didn't have it in me. I didn't. But now I'm like, I feel like I want to wear all the things I didn't want to wear back then. And I just want to be who I was then and who I still am now,
Yeah. Yep. Kath, what a goddamn delight this was.
It has been an absolute pleasure. I love that we just went right into it too. I love that it wasn't like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We just like went.
Oh, well, there's nothing. I mean, when we stop this and then I have to like break the spell and be like, so do you mind emailing me the like, I hate all of that stuff of it. So like, let's not do.
I'll just email to you. You don't even have to ask me. I'll just email to you.
But thank you so much. I'm so glad. All those compliments are genuine. So I hope.
Oh my gosh, you're a delight. Thank you so much. It's been very fun.
Yeah. All right. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.